Good, happy Tuesday morning. I'm Riley King, and welcome to my morning news report right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. Retiring police chief reflects on decades serving Queen City. He's held every ranking in the department, and now, after more than 25 years with the Manchester Police Department, Chief Nick Willard is retiring. Willard has spent 3 years as the top officer in the state's largest city. After this week, he'll move on to be the U.S. Marshal for New Hampshire. He took over the chief's job when police nationally were under scrutiny for some highly publicized and controversial shootings. His number one priority was to bridge the gap between police and community. Willard admitted he often spoke his mind, but said he leaves this job a more mature person in that regard. He said his biggest regret is the limited progress authorities have made in the opioid crisis. Willard said his worst day was when 2 of his officers were shot and wounded on the city's west side. Willard's last day as chief is Friday, when new Chief Carlo Capone will be sworn in. And now let's take a listen to this video from WMUR News 9, Andy Hirschberger.
He's held every rank in the department, and now, after more than a quarter century with the Manchester PD, Chief Nick Willard is retiring.
I was a young street cop, and I was sometimes could be difficult to supervise. I never really thought that I would rise to the level of police chief.
He spent 3 years as the top cop in the state's largest city. After this week, he'll move on to be the U.S. Marshal for New Hampshire. He took over the chief's job when police nationally were under scrutiny for some highly publicized and controversial shootings. His number one priority was to bridge the gap between police and community.
It was important to me to change that narrative and that messaging, to constantly reinforce to the officers that they have value to this community, and then also reinforce to the community to value your police officers.
Willard admits he often speaks his mind, but says he leaves this job a more mature person in that regard. His biggest regret is the limited progress they've made in the opioid crisis. His worst day when 2 of his officers were shot and wounded on the west side.
I feel incredibly responsible for the officers. So when something bad happens to them, you take it almost personal, and then you take on, how it affects their family. Everything I did, I try to do with a sincerity, with a pure heart, and with an incredible desire to give to my community.
Willard's last day is Friday, when new Chief Carlo Capone will be sworn in. In Manchester, Andy Hirschberger, WMUR News
9. Okay, and there you go on that video and that report from WMUR News 9, Andy Hirschberger. And all of us at the Riley King Network will miss you, Nick Willard, as the police chief of Manchester, but we wish you the very best on your new job. And that does it for my morning news report right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you back here later on today for another news report. Goodbye, everyone.